now that there are several attempts at financial centers, all within a short flying distance of each other. You've got Bahrain, you've got Kuwait, you've got Qatar, you've got Dubai, and you've got Abu Dhabi, which also has ambitions of its own. As chairman of the Dubai proposition, how would you differentiate yourself from what's happening all around you?
I think part of it you actually touched on yourself, in that a lot of them are trying to become onshore, offshore. GATA, for example, I have great respect for the QFC, it's run by a friend of mine.
Right.
But they have a different proposition from the DIFC. If people want to get involved, for example, in the GATA gas fields and business, or set up businesses in GATA, they've got to register with the QFC. We actually encourage people who register in the DIFC to also go and register in the QFC. So we see it as more complementary. You look at the Bahrainis, you look at the Kuwaitis, they do have, Bahrain has aspirations
Historically.
but it's looking to be more of, it's trying to create, I think, more of an Islamic financial center, and to be the repository, if you like, for things that have Sharia issues related to them, compliance. Kuwait actually haven't done a great deal with the financial center. Abu Dhabi, I'm not sure what they are going to do in the future. The other one that is looking as if it may want to do something else is Saudi Arabia. But they are a long way behind. Dubai is out in front, and we would like to stay out in front. But the other thing about Dubai is that we're always willing for others to come in and join us. So rather than recreating the wheel and reinventing it, if people want to come into the DIFC, the other GCC countries, and be a part of it, that's something that we would be open to.
You paint a picture of a lot of give and take between the Middle East countries. But if you take this entire effort to build a common currency, it was Dubai that sort of walked out of that consultation because of the location of the headquarters of the common currency effort. So what's happening on that front? Will that sort of tear apart the different players?
I don't think it will. I mean, long term. When you think about how long it took the Europeans to come together with a common currency and decide on where it was going to be housed, and the fact that ultimately Britain didn't join it, for example, you're always going to experience these sort of things. I think the GCC countries have done a lot more together over a considerable number of years than they have actually decided to do separately.
Such as?
Well, I mean, in terms of immigration passports, in terms of doing business, tariff-free business and everything else. So a trade-free zone within the GCC countries. I think this is partly a reflection, and so there may be some jealousies, if you like, about, well, where should it be located, we want it here, etc. And that'll be up for discussion. But I think in terms of conceptually, I think the currency idea is fine. But you've got to recognize also that many of the economies are in different sizes. I mean, Saudi is huge. If you compare that actually to, for example, Oman or to Qatar, Qatar will be very big over time. So I think they've also got those issues to sort out and talk about as well. So it's going to take time, but I suspect they will get there in the end.
Impression of the Middle East right now is that things are bad. There's whatever they have, or whatever each of the different players have in terms of a domestic economy, is sunken internally somewhat. How much of the recovery process is dependent on the price of oil, and how much of it is dependent on the actual creation of a real domestic economy?
You raise an interesting point. I mean, oil clearly has been the bedrock of how they've developed their countries and economies, and that's not something that is going to change in the short term. Qatar's economy will be built on gas, and I think in 10 years' time, I think Qatar is going to be an extraordinarily wealthy member of the GCC countries. But this is not something, as I said, it's not something that's going to change quickly. The price of oil is important, but the price of oil today, I think, has gone over $70 a barrel. But even when it was down in the 40s, and there didn't seem to be much appetite for taking it much lower than that, when you look at the production costs of most of those oil-producing countries, it's considerably below the $40 level even. If you look at their budgets, I think it's generally assumed that it's in their budget at around about $40 a barrel.
But economists were sort of flaunting the $40 number.
I think there was a difference. What I think the economists were trying to say was, as it's in the budget at 40, if it goes below that, they're not going to meet their budget targets, and therefore they've committed expenditure already.
Right.
So that then becomes an issue.
Right.
But if you take their actual production costs, they could put it in their budgets at a lot lower and spend less, because they've got it in their budgets lower. But they will still be in pretty good shape.
How would you describe Dubai's relationship with its larger neighbours, Saudi, Iran, even Turkey, and I guess even India for that matter, because one of the comments I've heard is Dubai is the best kept Indian city kind of thing.
Yeah. I think, if you look historically at Dubai, the trade with India has been going on forever. The trade with Iran has been going on for such a long time. Saudi Arabia is a country that is ultimately going to wake up. It has been very, very quiet for many years for a variety of reasons. And I think if you look to see what the present king has been doing in Saudi Arabia over the last few years in terms of relatively quietly opening the country up, that could have an impact in due course. But it's going to take a very long time to change many of the embedded views that exist within the people in Saudi Arabia. Some wonderful business people in Saudi, but a lot of their business is done outside Saudi Arabia, not in it. But the relationships, I think people look at Dubai is quite aggressive. I mean, it does get out there, and has always been out there. I mean, if anybody was doing trade with India in the 1950s and 60s, it was Dubai. It wasn't really anybody else. If you look at the population in Dubai, there's a very high proportion of not the indigenous population. The indigenous population is very small.
The migrant Indian population.
But the migrant Indian population and the Iranian population that exists in Dubai is very high.
But at the same time, Dubai wants to be global, and there it sort of gets into various conflict situations. There was this issue about the Israeli tennis player having to, wanting to play in Dubai and so on. So how does Dubai deal with this conflicting, friendships that it's creating around the world, and does it put it in a compromised position as a result?
I think everybody makes mistakes as they're learning what is required. And I mean, the particular issue over the tennis player, I'm sure that it fell into the wrong tray of somebody who took a decision which was, I think, clearly the wrong decision that was taken. And it doesn't matter which country you're in, that is going to happen from time to time. They have aspirations, they would like to be a player on the world stage, but they also have to remember that they are part of the UAE, and the UAE is the bigger country. And so there are times, I think, when they actually have to pull themselves back a little and say, well, we have the name in the marketplace, everybody knows who we are, but we've also got to promote the UAE, and we are a part of the UAE. So I think you'll perhaps be seeing a little bit more of that as the next few months and years unfold.